Hey, hey, baby, I'm ready, oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, baby, I'm ready, oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, hey, baby, I'm ready, oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky. There I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand, you and me. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are waiting, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are waiting, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are waiting, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky. There I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand, you and me. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey. Hey, we are hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh. Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky. There I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand, you and me. Hi-yo, hey-yo, hey-yo.
And welcome to day 2 of the UC Santa Cruz American Indian Resource Center's virtual event series for MMIWG titled Seeking Justice for Our Sisters. My name is Jemsy Ortiz, and I am the program coordinator at the UCSC American Indian Resource Center. I am a tribal member of the Northern Cheyenne Tribe located in Lame Deer, Montana. This year, our center is hosting a series of virtual events dedicated to raising awareness about MMIWG, or missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Tonight, I, along with my co-investigators from the Human Rights Investigations Lab for the Americas, are presenting Searching for Justice, a human rights investigation on Northern California MMIWG. And now I will share with you all the Amma Mutsun land acknowledgement. UC Santa Cruz is located on the unceded territory of the Waswa speaking Yupi tribe. The Amma Mutsun tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. The AIRC is dedicated to supporting the needs of American Indian students and increasing Native visibility on campus by hosting student-centered programs, cultural events, and providing tools for academic success and personal well-being. The center is a vital link between American Indian students, the university, and tribal communities that fosters growth through mentoring, leadership opportunities, and scholarly development.
Hello, my name is Montserrat. I am from the unceded territory of MMIWG, located what is known today Contra Costa County. Because we will be discussing heavy, troubling, and potentially triggering information, our friends from the UC Care office are here to support us. Care advocate Jamie will explain more about the services Care provides.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Floyd, she, her, and I am a prevention education intern at CARE. Because the content shared during these programs contains discussion and aspects of sexual and interpersonal violence, we want to remind you all that CARE is here for you. I'll briefly introduce the services and resources we offer, along with how to get in touch with us. So CARE is the confidential resource on campus for prevention education, resources, and support services for sexual violence, dating/domestic violence, and stalking. We provide support services both for people who have been directly impacted by these issues and people who might identify as support persons or concerned community members. Our free advocacy is available to all campus affiliates, including students, staff, and faculty, and all of CARE services are confidential and privileged. This means that we don't share any information with Title IX, the police, law enforcement, or other campus offices without a survivor's consent. The CARE advocates are able to provide support in many different ways. They support survivors in their decision-making and understand the complexities that can arise from these issues. Our advocates are state-certified crisis counselors trained in using trauma-informed practices. Also, all of our services are survivor-centered, which means our advocates prioritize the rights, needs, and wishes of the survivor. So CARE advocates provide holistic support services and help the survivor understand their rights and options. Advocates frequently provide ongoing emotional support and safety planning, as sexual violence can take away a survivor's autonomy, and our advocates aim to help survivors restore a sense of power and safety and foster their long-term healing. Second, advocates can also help with academic accommodations and direct referrals to other campus resources like CAPS, select support, and more to meet survivors' needs. And finally, advocates support survivors' decisions, whether to report to the police, Title IX, or not to report. If a survivor does choose to report to either Title IX or the police, CARE advocates can be with survivors every step of the way through that process. That is just a basic overview of our advocacy services. So if you have any questions regarding what CARE offers, please feel free to reach out to us. Remotely and can be reached either by phone or email at care@ucsc.edu. Here's our number, email again, and also webpage. As you are participating and engaging with the events in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, know that CARE is here for you. Throughout this series of programs, one of our CARE advocates will be available by phone or text at the number we will put in the chat. So if you start to feel overwhelmed at any moment and would like extra support, please feel free to reach out to them. I want to thank the AIRC staff and interns for all your work and energy in creating this program and for allowing me to share a little bit about CARE. I hope you all practice some self-care today, and thank you all so much for your time. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, CARE, for being here with us tonight to support our audience. As a content warning, today's presentation will cover topics of sexual assault and violence towards Native women and girls. For that reason, we urge you to take care of ourselves. If you need to exit this call at any time, please do so. If you would like to have a confidential check-in with an advocate about anything about that comes up for you today, call or text 831-204-0094. This is only available for the duration of today's event. For support from CARE after today, please call again 831-502-CARE or email care@ucsc.edu.
The information for CARE has been posted in the chat. Should you need to access it at any point, and we will share it again throughout the presentation tonight. As well, tonight, we ask that everyone use the Zoom Q&A box to submit any questions you may have. We will have a Q&A session once all presentations have been delivered tonight. We will do our best to answer your questions at that time. And with that, we will get started with tonight's presentation. Oh, actually, sorry, excuse me. I'm going to introduce Dr. Silvana Falcon, founder and director of the Human Rights Investigations Lab.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Professor Silvana Falcon, Associate Professor in Latin American and Latino Studies and the founder and director of the Human Rights Investigations Lab. We launched in fall of 2019, and we offer digital verification support to non-governmental organizations, to news outlets, and to other advocacy partners like the AIRC that are conducting or wanting to conduct open source investigations. We're housed at the Research Center for the Americas, which is based in the Division of Social Sciences here at UC Santa Cruz. And our work is meant to promote justice and to work towards achieving accountability for communities who are adversely affected by human rights violations throughout the region. Next slide, please. I want to tell you a little bit about what open source research means and about tonight's presentation. So when we talk about online open source research, we're referring to any information that is publicly available on the internet. The purpose here is to advance what we think of as fact-finding and human rights accountability for the public good. In the lab, we teach students how to collate and synthesize this information systemically for the purposes of research. Part of this also involves teaching students how to scrutinize the information that they see online. Once a team has completed their research, we consider the various methods of public presentation if that's appropriate. Many of the cases that we take at the lab are highly confidential and will never be released to the public per the request of our partners. So for this evening, the team organized their presentation on a digital platform that's known as ARC-GIS Story Maps. The benefit of this platform is it allows for the combining of text, digital maps, and other multimedia content in order to tell the story. You're going to be viewing a presentation that is not yet public, and once the digital story map is complete, then AIRC will determine its public release once it's complete. So with that, I think I will introduce Denise, who will start the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Denise, and I use she, her pronouns. I am zooming in from the unceded territory of the Pasenga tribal area of the Fernandeño-Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, now known as Selmar, California. This artwork you see on your screen is a painting titled Still Dancing by Jonathan Labiloy. A quote from the artist's little sister inspired the painting. Quote, "Dancers dance for those who cannot, the sick, the elders, and those who are gone. It's like all those women are still dancing through her," end quote. Still Dancing was donated to the Montreal Native Women's Shelter to raise awareness of missing and murdered women in Canada. Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, also known as MMIWG, is an international movement that brings urgent recognition and demands justice for the disappearances and murders of Native women and girls. The acronyms MMIW, MMIWG, and MMIWG2S, to include Two-Spirit peoples, are used interchangeably to refer to this crisis. The use of the red hand over a mouth symbolizes the voices of women who have been silenced. The movement first began with First Nation women and their families in Canada, putting pressure on the Canadian government to investigate the alarming rates of MMIW. The G was later added to include the effects on girls. The advocacy stemming from grassroots organizations and families of MMIWG victims led to the creation of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls in Canada that encompasses multiple forms of violence, ranging from sexual assault to bullying and harassment. It lasted from December 2015 through June 30th, 2019. May 5th is the United States' National Day of Remembrance for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, while Canada has dedicated October 4th for their commemoration. May 5th honors the birthday of Hannah Harris, a 21-year-old Northern Cheyenne woman who went missing on July 3rd, 2013. Law enforcement wanted to wait until after the July 4th holiday to start their search, but a community search party proceeded instead to search for Hannah. On July 8th, 2013, her body was found in Lame Deer, Montana. In the United States, there have been an increasing amount of mobilization efforts to raise awareness about MMIWG. For example, the US Congress passed MMIWG legislation known as Savannah's Act. Savannah's Act is named after Savannah LaFontaine Graywind, a 22-year-old pregnant member of the Spirit Lake tribe. She went missing on August 19, 2017 in Fargo, North Dakota. This act seeks to develop law enforcement protocols to address missing or murdered Native Americans, implement a strategy to educate the public on MMIWG, and report accurate statistics on MMIWG. Most recently, the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, an enrolled member of the Laguna Pueblo, announced the creation of the Missing and Murdered Unit, MMU, within the Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Justice Services. With that, I would now like to introduce James.
Hello, y'all. My name is James Retana, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am speaking tonight from what is now known as present-day Santa Cruz, California. This investigation is a result of a partnership between the AIRC and the HRI lab, and GEMPZ played the extremely crucial roles of both researcher and liaison between both organizations. Before beginning the investigation, the team received training in online open source research from experts in the field, including Bellingcat. We applied our training to this investigation, collecting and analyzing data from the following sources: social media outlets like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, databases like NamUs and police records, tribal websites, and online news articles. To analyze this data, we use techniques known as geolocation, geographically locating images, chronolocation, determining the approximate time of an image, network analysis, and digital mapping to help us visualize the interrelations of different entities. We also incorporated other practices that became essential to our research process. We emphasized the well-being of our team by engaging in self-care, team and community building, and other activities like team meditation. In addition to this, we regularly met with AIRC Director, Dr. Hernandez, to ensure transparency and to receive feedback. Dr. Hernandez made a practice to open our virtual spaces with prayer to protect us throughout the investigation. When the team was determining cases to pursue, we wanted to make sure that our decisions respected the families of victims to the fullest extent. If relatives or community members of their tribe considered a case to be MMIWG, then we marked it as so. To begin the investigation, we followed relevant social media hashtags such as hashtag MMIWG, hashtag No More Stolen Sisters, and hashtag Not Invisible. After consultations with the AIRC in the early weeks of this investigation, we directed the research towards 3 local tribal communities: the Yurok tribe, the Hoopa Valley Tribe, and the Round Valley Tribes based in Northern California. You'll learn more about these communities in a few minutes. During our research, we learned about the Sovereign Bodies Institute SBI report titled, "I Will See You Again in a Good Way," published in July 2020. This report provided a tremendous amount of guidance for our work, including further context into the complicated history of MMIWG. Located in Humboldt, California and Northern California, SBI published this groundbreaking report, which included 105 cases of MMIWG in Northern California, dating all the way back to 1900. 87% of the documented cases occurred after 1980. The report emphasizes that the documentation and effort to better identify these cases have increased the recorded number of MMIWG cases, as opposed to an actual increase in the number of cases. I would now like to introduce Sophie.
Hello, my name is Sophie, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm presenting today from the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of Yelamu, now known as the San Francisco Peninsula. California has its own unique and lengthy ongoing history of settler colonialism in the United States, beginning with Spanish intervention in the southern region of California and continuing in Northern California during the Gold Rush era. California state policies have historically set the precedent that Native livelihoods are not important. California has 109 federally recognized tribes with 78 additional communities petitioning for recognition. And according to most recent census data, quote, California is home to more people of Native American and Alaska Native heritage than any other state in the country, end quote. Federal recognition affects the investigations and tracking of MMIWG cases, especially in urban areas, due to race misclassification and lack of support by official investigation services. According to the Sovereign Bodies report mentioned earlier, quote, approximately 2/3 of identified California cases occurred in Northern California, and 15% of cases occurred specifically in the Yurok Tribal Service area, end quote. As you can see on your screen, our team focused our research on the 3 largest tribes in Northern California: the Yurok, Hoopa Valley, and Round Valley tribes. The case that we will present today occurred with a tribal member of the Round Valley Indian Reservation, located in the remote California Coast Range of northern Mendocino County, though a small part extends northward into southern Trinity County, and it is approximately 30 miles inland from the coast. The principal tribes of the Round Valley Indian Reservation are the Clear Lake or Pomo, Concow, Little Lake, Nome Lac, Pit River or Achamawi, Potter Valley or Pomo, Redwood, Wailaki, and Yuki. The population estimate on the reservation is 390 people, though the total tribal enrollment estimates a population of 1,582, most of whom presumably live off reservation. The 30,000 acres of tribal lands are scattered throughout the historic boundaries in a checkerboard pattern of ownerships, and over 2/3 of this area is off-reservation trust land, including the city of Cobolo, where Khadijah, the woman who we will highlight today, was last seen. Although jurisdiction is a complicated issue, we want to mention it briefly here, as it has been cited by many as contributing to the crisis of MMIWG. As shown in the diagram on the screen now, legal jurisdiction
in the United States is a complicated terrain, and it differs from state to state. Since California is a Public Law 280 state, crimes involving a Native victim and a Native perpetrator are investigated under tribal and state jurisdiction, meaning the Federal Bureau of Investigations does not have official jurisdiction over the case. To find this diagram, please see the link in the chat to the Sovereign Bodies Report. The diagram can be found on page 26. The case we are going to discuss today does involve the FBI, but it is important to note that this is not always the case for incidents occurring on reservations. I would now like to pass it back to Jemsy.
This evening, we are sharing with you our research about Khadijah Britton. The details of this case are extremely troubling and may be impactful to those of you hearing about it tonight. We are posting again in the chat the confidential support that is available to you during this evening. Please take care. Throughout this presentation, you will hear our team refer to Khadijah Britton by her first name. We made this decision for many reasons. One, being that throughout our investigation, it felt impersonal and inappropriate to refer to her by her last name only. Khadijah is someone whom we felt closely connected to after months of investigating her case. She is a person, woman, daughter, sister, cousin, niece, friend. And we feel we are honoring those relationships when saying her name. Second, this past year has shed light on the many injustices and harm committed against people of color and Black women especially. The Say Her Name hashtag, founded by Andrea J. Ritchie and Kimberly Crenshaw, is used frequently when discussing women like Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, Oluwatoyin Salau, and most recently, Ma'Khia Bryant. We join this community call as there is power in saying and repeating a name. We say Khadijah's name with the utmost respect and honor for her community and family.
Khadijah Rose Britton, nicknamed Deej, is a member of the Wailaki tribe of the Round Valley Indian Reservation. She was born on April 22nd, 1994, and raised in Covelo, California. She was 23 years old at the time of her disappearance on February 7, 2018. As of today, May 4th, 2021, she is 27 years old. You'll see here, we created a timeline that goes over important and key dates pertaining to this particular case. Khadijah Britton was allegedly abducted outside of her friend's home in Covelo, California, on the 23,000 block of Airport Road. On the day she went missing, February 7, 2018, Khadijah posted on Facebook that she was with two friends. We have redacted their names for their privacy. According to the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office and Khadijah's family members, Neji Tony Fallis, Khadijah's former boyfriend, has been the main investigative lead of Khadijah's disappearance. On February 7, 2018, Fallis and his girlfriend, Antonia Bautista Dawson, reportedly pulled up to a weathered beige home where Khadijah was at the time, around midnight in a black Mercedes sedan armed with a small Derringer pistol. Fallis allegedly assaulted Britton and shoved her into the car, and Bautista Dawson promptly drove away. Khadijah has not been seen since this day. Just days prior to Khadijah's February 7, 2018 disappearance, she filed a domestic violence report against Fallis after he allegedly assaulted her with a hammer. Khadijah's mother, Connie Hostler, had been worried about her daughter's safety as reported in a May 11, 2018 Press Democrat article. In that same article, Hostler described an unsettling incident prior to her disappearance that led Andrea Oliver, Khadijah's stepmother, to call the police. Khadijah provided the police with an incident statement at that time. but just hours before her disappearance, Khadijah told the police that she did not want to press charges against Fallis. Khadijah's family believes Fallis may have coerced her into withdrawing the police incident statement against him.
Since filing the missing report in February of 2018, Khadijah's stepmother reported her missing on February 10, 2018, after not hearing from Khadijah for 3 days. Tribal police did not suspect foul play until 2 days after the February 10th missing person report. Over 1 week later, on February 19, 2018, the police charged Fallis with assault, kidnapping, first-degree burglary, threats to commit a crime resulting in a death or greatly bodily injury, attempted murder, and being a felon in possession of a firearm and ammunition. Fallis pleaded not guilty. A few months later, on June 4, 2018, authorities dropped most charges against Fallis due to the lack of evidence and cooperation. The lack of cooperation came from potential witnesses and Fallis himself. However, the possession of a gun and ammunition charges will remain. With some charges being dismissed, Fallis' bail dropped from $400,000 to $35,000. Fallis released on bail until his October 2018 court date. In October 2018, Fallis was sentenced to a 4-year state prison sentence after he pleaded no contest to the felony charged against him. Over a year after Khadijah's disappearance, on Monday, March 11, 2019, the local TV ABC News reported that Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, along with the Mendocino County Search and Rescue, drained the pond. As reported by the local ABC News, quote, investigators say during a January 2019 search of the area, a K9 showed interest in the pond, so they decided to look further. The MCSO requested the Round Valley Indian Tribal Council to let them drain the pond, which was granted. A plan was developed and the pond was drained with several large water pumps, end quote. Unfortunately, draining the pond, investigators did not find her body, and Khadijah remains missing. During our investigation, we confirmed Fallis is currently detained on a felony charge for possession of 2 firearms and ammunition. We located records which state that Fallis has an upcoming sentencing appointment on May 25th, 2021, less than a year after his most recent detainment. Fallis remains the investigative lead in Khadijah's case, and both police and Britton's family believe she was murdered. Both the families and the police hope that Britton's body will be found.
Barriers to solving the case and our lingering questions. We speculate that a lack of stable employment at the tribal police enforcement has been a barrier for justice in this case. According to a Mendocino County Sheriff's Office press release, Vincent Cordova from the Round Valley Indian Tribal Police was in charge of the case as of 2018, but he is not currently listed as staff on the tribe's website, which raises questions for us about his current employment in the police force. Additionally, according to the tribe's website, the Round Valley Indian Tribal Police does not currently have a chief of police on duty. Sheriff Tom Allman from the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, the lead on Khadijah's case, retired in late 2019. Because the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office has jurisdiction over Khadijah's case, Allman leaving the force with the case still open potentially creates another obstacle for finding Khadijah. High staff turnover, along with a lack of sufficient personnel, would likely lead to a loss of evidence and the inability to pursue credible leads. Although tribal police are more familiar with the terrain, and even though all suspected parties in the disappearance of Khadijah were tribal members, the tribal police were not able to take lead when a tribal member went missing. Instead, the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office took the lead of the investigation into Khadijah's disappearance.
A Facebook post by Khadijah's aunt, Laura Betts, posted on May 13, 2018, states that a friend of Khadijah's heard a woman yelling on the night of Khadijah's disappearance, quote, "You killed her and ruined my life," end quote. An individual, name redacted, confirmed this and posted below, quote, "I was on Crawford Road and the yelling came from Tabor Lane," end quote, which is less than 1 mile from where Khadijah was last seen. Who was the woman yelling, and had the police located and interviewed her? In addition to this, public comments from family members indicated there was a lack of cooperation between the family and investigators from the beginning of the case. In general, the community believes that the police did not take the case as seriously as they should have, even suggesting she was not truly missing. We found that this has been a common struggle for MMIWG families. Betts expressed her dissatisfaction of the handling of Khadijah's case in an interview on the Vanished podcast. This podcast, dated October 14, 2018, discusses Khadijah's disappearance and reveals a disturbing piece of information according to Betts. Betts states that Fallis's mother was said to be acting strangely following Khadijah's disappearance. The mother was allegedly seen burning dead dogs in a barrel, hosing down her house, and repainting. When police questioned Fallis's mother about this behavior, she claimed to be just remodeling. How did the police reconcile with this claim and the allegations made? According to a 2019 article by John Ferris called "Restoring the Power of a Free Mind and Body and the Violence Against Women," the car Khadijah was taken in was burned for an unknown reason, and the clothing recovered by the police went missing. The claims in this article, coupled with Ronnie Hostler's, Khadijah's grandfather, stating 3 tribal police officers were closely related to Fallis, raises several questions about the quality and integrity of this investigation. Hostler stated at the November 23, 2019 gathering in Sacramento that he believes Khadijah was killed because she may have known sensitive information about previous crimes Fallis committed. Was Khadijah's withdrawal of the police statement coerced because she had criminal information about Fallis? February 2021, a renewed call for information on a 3-year anniversary. On the 3rd anniversary of Khadijah's disappearance, the community had a rally in February of 2021 in which there were renewed calls for information on her case. Khadijah's family was in attendance, and the FBI increased the reward amount for any information on Khadijah. Khadijah's family is still seeking justice for the disappearance of their loved one. There is now a hashtag called #SearchingForKhadijah. Her family and tribal communities at large hold frequent events to raise awareness about Khadijah and numerous other missing and murdered Indigenous women of Northern California. As these actions and our research show, there are still so many gaps and questions that remain. The work against the MMIWG crisis is a constantly ongoing process, and it is necessary to continue to raise awareness of the impact of this crisis.
Before I get started, I offer this as a disclaimer. The organizations I will be discussing may be potentially triggering, as I will be discussing organizations that are involved with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, organizations that help break substance abuse, and will be highlighting organizations that work on domestic and sexual violence issues. Many organizations involved with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls bring light to the movement and raise awareness on cases across the globe. Some organizations provide MMIWG resources, such as toolkits, to guide families on how to bring awareness around their communities and bring justice to the lives that have been affected. We highlight a few organizations here in this section to provide an overview of this justice work. Organizations have also made their marks on Facebook. Many organizations post MMIWG flyers, spreading information to the community, and ask to repost their flyers so that their names and faces are never forgotten. With the help of these organizations, they can spread more awareness and reach a bigger audience. In the cases that we researched, family members who were affected by a missing and murdered relative. The families were the ones that were spreading awareness to bring justice to their loved ones. The first organization listed is called Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women USA. You can find this organization here in this link, which will bring you to their website. Aside from that, they also have a Facebook at MMIWG USA, which is, quote, dedicated to bringing missing and murdered American Indian women and their families to create awareness of the MMIWG problems in this country, end quote. They offer a program called Staying Sacred, where they teach self-defense lessons to eradicate the problem of MMIWG. Also on their Facebook page, they have reposted missing flyers of Khadijah to help spread awareness.
The second organization is the Sovereign Bodies Institute, which we highlighted during the presentation. Their mission, quote, builds on Indigenous traditions of data gathering and knowledge transfer to create, disseminate, and put into action research on gender and sexual violence against Indigenous people, end quote. As we mentioned earlier, the Sovereign Bodies Institute has published a report called I Will See You Again in a Good Way, a year one project report on missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people of Northern California. A similar progress report will be released yearly until the project is finalized in 2022. Please check out their website shared in the chat for more updates from them.
The third organization we would like to highlight for you is called Friendship House Association of American Indians. Their mission is to help, quote, American Indians heal from substance abuse by breaking the inherited cycles of psychological, social, and economic dislocation. According to Friendship House, they have helped over 4,800 clients to overcome substance abuse and have empowered hundreds of youth and have created events for the community.
The fourth organization is the Association on American Indian Affairs. They are, quote, the oldest nonprofit serving Indian country, protecting sovereignty, preserving culture, educating youth, and building capacity, end quote. On their website, they have created a list of resources for both tribal and non-tribal organizations. Using this link, you can find a list of organizations and a list of hotlines.
Lastly, the final is the National Center on Domestic and Sexual Violence. This organization, quote, enhances diversity with the goal of ending domestic and sexual violence, end quote. Using this link, you can find other organizations such as the National Indigenous Women Research, the National Indigenous Women Resource Center, which is dedicated to end violence. This year on June 8th, they will host a virtual event which will provide training opportunities, domestic violence programs, and tribal community-based programs.
We would now like to close this presentation by each of us sharing what participating in this investigation has meant to us. We will begin with Sophie.
Investigating MMIWG in Northern California has exposed a new understanding for me of the region in which I grew up and call home. I feel empowered to be able to expand upon the work of organizations led largely by Indigenous women and pushing to shine a light on such a pervasive and local issue.
Investigation has helped me gain a clear idea. I'm sorry, I just got a notification that my internet was bad. Did y'all hear me? Did it cut off at all?
Yeah, I didn't hear you, James. Can you restart?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was saying that for me to be on this team with such amazing and spectacular people was an extremely humbling experience that allowed me to learn and grow in a lot of ways, as a researcher, as a person, and as an ally. Our research covered Northern California, but home for me is actually Southern California. And I mention this because I feel that the work from this investigation has helped me gain a clearer idea of how to support and be a better ally to the Native communities around me in what we now call Los Angeles.
Looking into MMIWG and the structural obstacles that come with seeking justice for Native women has really opened my eyes to how severe this crisis and form of genocide really is. I feel honored to be able to investigate these human rights abuses and contribute to the amazing work of Indigenous advocates.
Being part of this investigation has not only been difficult, but it has also been rewarding. It has been difficult reading all the descriptive articles, scrolling through the hashtags, and at times listening to podcasts. It has been also difficult reading the families' interviews, speeches, and social media posts speaking out to find justice for their loved ones. However, it has also been rewarding researching all this information to serve as another outlet to raise awareness and continue to say their names. I'm grateful we finally get to share this with you all.
As a Northern Cheyenne woman, being a part of this team of investigators was rewarding, humbling, and an honor. And at the same time, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It is an honor to have worked alongside the members on this team, to be in solidarity and support of the Indigenous peoples of Northern California, a place I call home. It was inspiring to find that the families of every single woman we researched are fighting for justice. It sustained a fire in myself because I know that they will never give up either. All missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls still live on and are with their families and friends in our hearts and our minds. This is a human rights issue that directly affects the women in my life and family. Besides Northern California, home for me is also Montana. The same home as Hannah Harris and my cousin, Odyssey Gonzalez. Both of these women were born in May, were members of the Northern Cheyenne tribe, and had their lives stolen at the young age of 21. My family, like many others, including Khadijah's, are still seeking justice. May my sisters rest in power, and may the missing come back home. Thank you.
So now we would like to open it up to any Q&As. You can put questions in the Q&A box, and we will do our best to answer all of the questions. So I think we'll go ahead and get us started with our first question, even though I interact with the students all the time. But I just first I just want to congratulate you all on the presentation. I know how hard you've all worked in getting this ready and doing the research, and just being able to share it this evening. And so one question I have for you is to think about, what have you learned about yourself as a researcher in this process? And maybe what surprised you about engaging in this sort of intimate look at what happened in this case in Khadijah. We can talk just about Khadijah since we spoke about this particular case, but maybe a little bit of self-reflection about more deeply what you learned about yourself. And we can maybe start with you, Jemsy.
That's a hard question. I don't know. This has been really very difficult for me. I've never had a research position before this year, and I did not realize how tedious it can truly be. We have lots of different ways of writing down everything about every single piece of evidence that we encountered, including like the time it was posted, the day it was posted, the name of the title, everything, the link, all of that part. So that's one thing I've learned, is that I need to be more thorough, and make sure I have all my information correct. So that's one thing. Yeah, I think I'll pass it on to someone else. I'll let you know if I think of something else.
I'll pass it to Sophie. Sophie, what do you think you learned about yourself, sort of reflecting on the process for you?
I think this process has been very difficult and enlightening. Learning how to keep a capacity of distance, I think, is important. I can say that I think we all became really close to the cases that we investigated, and to be so personally invested can sometimes make the research more difficult. So I think that's been something that I've learned throughout this process.
How about you, Montserrat?
Yeah, for me, I think I've learned more about like the community itself, because living in like Northern California as well, like we hear about these places, but you just never know what's going on, right? So just like listening to like these stories and like continuing to like just like reading all of this, it makes it really like broad, and like it makes you understand something more, another piece of this, right? So that's kind of what I learned. Like it's been like a really intense thing too as well.
How about you, James?
Man, in regards to the research, I think that this is my first position as a researcher. It really opened my eyes to what that can look like. I think it was really, really empowering to learn about open source research techniques. Those are things that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life. On a more like personal or emotional level, it was really difficult. It's always been really easy for me to like cry and stuff. And so it was like, it was a lot. It was really hard to look at all of these cases and have to, accept that we might not be able to find the answers that we want. But I'm really, really grateful to work with the team here. I think that having a team is so much better than doing it, on our own. And I think that something really important for me throughout the investigation was constantly acknowledging my privilege, as somebody who's not Native, and also as somebody who every night was able to get up and walk away from the research. I did really, really want to acknowledge that, because it's a really big privilege on my end.
Thank you, James. And Denise, how about you?
I think I learned a lot from this research. Definitely in terms of the research, taking on the team lead role, it was definitely something that I've never done before, and it made me more organized, and yeah, just being on top of everything, and just making sure we had the links down, making sure we had screenshots of everything we were finding, because things can go away on the internet. So just being on top of those kinds of things was kind of stressful, but as more personally, I think I learned how strong I really can be, and how privileged I am, going off of what James was saying. Like, I am also non-Native, so taking a step back from the research we were doing, was also a privilege. But yeah, I would find myself dreaming about the women we were researching and having that personal connection, even though we didn't meet them when in person or anything like that. Just still having that like personal attachment to these cases was also kind of really hard.
Thank you all for sharing that sort of self-reflection piece. I think one of the benefits of doing this as a team is you all had one another. And I think when we started the investigation and realized how many, it's impossible to not have your emotions enter it. and to be able to have one another to talk about how we were feeling, to talk about maybe sort of calling out the privilege that we might feel even engaging in this work, I think was important as part of the research process, because so many times people engage in research in a very detached manner, in a way as if it doesn't affect them. And I think part of the principles of having a feminist lab is we welcome emotions and we welcome that kind of transparency and ethics. Because it's important to sort of recognize our whole selves in all of the work that we do. There's a great question here about sort of what's the purpose of open source methods. And so I'll answer this question, then the rest of you are free to please add to it. The question is, are open source research methods like this seen as an alternative to working through law enforcement or judicial systems that often do not provide justice or can in fact further harm? I think this is a great question because I think it can do both. It can be an alternative form of trying to figure out and determine what happened, but it can also be a way, and Jemsy talked about how the sort of systems we have in place to make sure everything is logged and tracked appropriately, that can actually be evidence given into investigators' hands who might be there on the ground. I think there's ways in which, of course, law enforcement and those units can in fact enact harm. And part of what we were really conscious about as a team is how do we not inadvertently harm any of these families in the investigation that we were in fact doing. But I think you can see open source methods as a way to verify what you're hearing from the law enforcement is actually what is true. So the section in which the students and the team shared with you the lingering questions, we were never able to arrive to a conclusion like, did they talk to this person who posted on Facebook that they heard screams nearby? Did they talk to follow up with Fallis's mother and actually figure out what was happening given the alleged peculiar behavior? And so if anything, it showed to us that there are serious gaps. And I think James talked about the gaps. That's what open source can also do for you, is actually show that there's still gaps that somebody needs to figure out how to close. And so that's why in that section of lingering questions, we sort of point out that those things. So yes, it can be sort of an alternative form, but it can also be a way to verify that what you're hearing is in fact truth. Dr. Dunkel has a question here. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that. I guess I should say that first. Everyone's good. Okay. All right, we'll go to the next question from Dr. Dunkel. Dr. Dunkel wants to thank you all for your powerful presentation and the important research that you've done in the lab. And Dr. Dunkel wants to know if you can talk about how open source investigations, this information that you discovered and verified online, can contribute to justice efforts for Khadijah, possibly Khadijah's family, and maybe other cases of MMIWG. Does somebody want to take that question up to think about how the information you've discovered can actually help some of these cases?
I can begin. So I think there's multiple parts that we hope to do with this investigation and the information that we found and that we will be sharing, that we've already shared out with all of you today and that will be published online. One is just to spread awareness and to make sure that others know about this, know what's happening. And I think too, also to show that there's aspects of these cases that are happening almost everywhere. There's patterns that are showing up when we're looking at these cases, and that can help show evidence, because people love evidence and data. They love those concrete facts. So that shows that this has happened in this case, this case, this case. It's happening everywhere. So for people that might question like that this isn't something that's happening across our nation in the US and Canada, we have the evidence to show that it is happening and that there are patterns that are showing up for each one of these women. And for their families, this can give their information and knowledge is power. We know that. So we just hope to kind of, we hope to help the families. And yeah, I think, I don't know if anyone else wants to add on to that.
I actually do. I think in addition to everything that Jemsy said, uh, we dug through a lot of things. It was very, very, very nitty gritty, and it's over the course of the past 7 months. So it's been a lot of information that we looked at, and I think that it was really important to do because we actually found some things that were like discrepancies that were not what we were being told. So I think that the work that we did here is like really just like making things transparent, and particularly in the case of Khadijah. And moving forward, if more work like this is done, hopefully it can do the same.
I think the only thing that I would add that was important about this particular case is I think a lot of the scholarship that we were reading about MMIWG talked a lot about the structural obstacles of jurisdiction. And so what we discovered in this case is that that obstacle was not as present as it has been in other cases. And it showed to us that actually there's other institutional and other structural problems that interfered in this case. For instance, not really having clarity on who was responsible for the case, the high staff turnover, the discrepancies of who is in charge and not in charge. Those kinds of things really, I think, pointed out that that while jurisdiction is definitely a problem and a huge obstacle in the majority of MMIWG cases, we happen to come across one in which it didn't seem to be as big an obstacle, but there were absolutely other structural obstacles that have led to the, in some ways, the inconclusiveness of this particular case. I think the other part too, in response also to Dr. Dunkel's question about justice efforts, as we were doing this research, we realized like, oh my goodness, it's the 3-year anniversary of her disappearance. And suddenly there was another wave of rallies, of families posting on social media, of press conferences. As we shared the FBI posting a reward, all this was just a couple of months ago. And so even though the disappearance happened 3 years ago, in real time, the team was actually uncovering real-time posts on a case that from 3 years ago, in which families are still seeking justice and answers and accountability. Are there any other questions from the audience? And you can put it in the Q&A box. Well, while someone posts a question in the Q&A box, I wanted to ask if we could talk a little bit about the importance of having Dr. Hernandez enter our space at the beginning of each quarter and at the end of each quarter, and what that meant to you. Because one of the things that Dr. Hernandez and I talk about was, this is not really the status quo of academia to be starting with kind of a protection prayer, and sort of acknowledging that we were entering and going to do sort of difficult work. And so I imagine that hasn't been your experience in other classes at the university necessarily, but I wondered if you could talk about the importance of Dr. Hernandez coming in and talking with the team, obviously giving us the sort of jurisdiction and Native American 101 lecture that she gives to classes and to others who request it. But what did it mean to you to have Dr. Hernandez join us in those moments? And Sophie, maybe we'll start with you.
I would say that beginning our quarters and our investigations and cases with a prayer to protect us, really grounded us in the work we were doing and the terrain that we were investigating. And I'm really grateful for Dr. H to be so involved in our investigation and to have us be a part of the event today. And yeah, I think it was a really good way of grounding us in the work that we were doing.
Thank you, Sophie. How about for you, Denise?
I think it was a very humbling experience to have her present. It was like a mother figure protecting her children. That's how I took it, and that's how it made me feel. It made me feel really safe and just ready to take on what we were gonna find, what leads we were gonna have. Because at times we did feel like we were gonna solve the case like first than the actual police. So it was a very humbling experience, and I'm really appreciative that Dr. H took her time to join us and just guide us in our research and provide her insight as to what we were going to do and what we were going to research and what areas and what tribes, and just having her input just made it feel much more personal.
Thank you, Denise. How about you, James?
Yeah, I think it was really crucial to our work to have Dr. H open and close, our quarters with these protective prayers. Not only for our protection, but also I think it was really important to create and maintain a relationship with the AIRC, especially regarding the nature of our research. So I thought that it really helped with maintaining that relationship, with making sure that we both were very transparent and clear with each other. And, just like you said, with this being a feminist lab and emotions being welcome, I just think it really helped curate our emotional relationship with each other as organizations.
Thank you, James. Monserrat?
Yeah, well, ever since like the first meeting that we had with Dr. H, it was just so like empowering just because like we did our like little prayer at the end, and like I just got the whole chills everywhere. And so like it was just so like empowering that like we were like ready to start our research with that, right? And then just being that like we kept having her coming in like every 2 times a quarter, and so it's also like a motivation. So yeah, I'm really thankful for that. Also because like it's also like that connection, how we said like we have that connection, and then with the sorry, with the ARRC, right? And then so yeah.
Thank you, Montserrat. Jemsy, I know you kind of had this dual role of research member and kind of bridge between the lab and AIRC. So what did it mean for you to have Dr. Hernandez's presence with us?
It meant a lot to me, just because Dr. H is someone who I really look up to, and I have since I was a student at UCSC. And to be able to share the space with her and to have her tell us like, what you're doing is important. I see what you're doing. Like it was just, like the others are saying, comforting, empowering, humbling, and grounding also. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I see Dr. H all the time, so it was fun to see her at these lab meetings too, and for her to be like, "I'm back again," and just to have the researchers interact with Dr. H too. That was cool. Because I would talk about you all, but she doesn't know you all as much. So it was nice for her to be able to talk with us and see everyone, and yeah.
Thank you, Jemsy. I just wanted to acknowledge Dr. Hernandez because I don't think the investigation would have gone and the experience would not have been the same. Not having her in the beginning of the quarter, on call as needed, and then also at the end. I think as the director of the lab, and as sort of constantly worried about students and their well-being, there was something very reassuring to have this added component to this particular team and investigation. So I definitely want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Hernandez so much for taking the time. So we have one question and we'll sort of do our best in answering it. It's a little bit of a complicated question because it's the J question, the jurisdictional question. And the question is basically if we could speak a little bit more about jurisdictional issues, and in our research, have we come across any cases that resulted in some form of justice? And so I think what we'll talk a little bit about there is our introduction to perhaps this jurisdictional issue. We do plan to sort of elaborate a bit more on it in the digital story, but I wondered if somebody would like to just sort of talk through about, how they came across the sort of scholarship, what maybe some of the key things that they learned about this issue. James, do you want to maybe get us started?
Sure, yeah. So in regards to like jurisdictional issues, they are very common across MMIWG cases. And I think it's really important to preface that with how jurisdiction is given to these cases. And it has a lot to do with the people involved. So if they're, if it's two Native people, say this is a situation with two people, right? If there's two Native people, then tribal police, depending on the state, may get jurisdiction over the case. However, if there's somebody non-Native involved, then tribal police doesn't get jurisdiction. And this can play a really big role in cases getting the type of attention that they need and getting the kind of care that they need. Man, I don't know. It's just that it is really complicated. It's really complicated and there's so much to it and there's a lot of layers to it. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
Well, maybe Sophie, if you could talk a little bit about what you learned around Public Law 280, that might actually help sort of situate a little bit California in this jurisdictional conversation.
Yeah, so with PL 280, a Native perpetrator and a Native victim are investigated under tribal investigators, as I'm just echoing James here, and maybe if we could pull up the document here. It's such a complicated issue that we really need to go into depth more for the actual published article. I don't know if Professor Falcone, you have any more?
So I think the one thing that I would say about the jurisdictional issue is the students learned in their research about it, and this is really where kind of the sort of library research really came in handy, is that in fact it's such a complicated terrain in terms of the tension between state and federal processes. Knowing when and why certain cases do actually cross and reach out to the FBI and which ones don't. Like it isn't actually clear what were the factors that led for this agreement in Khadijah's case to actually involve the FBI. We could never quite figure out why that happened. But it's in part, it's so multi-layered, this structural obstacle, that each case encounters it in a different kind of way. And in the case of Khadijah, it wasn't quite as prevalent. I think the second part of the question about, in the research, if you come across any cases that resulted in some form of justice, I think we can pretty confidently say no if we mean justice, meaning closure or some kind of resolution. All of the cases that we research, and you just heard about one this evening, none of them arrived to any kind of conclusion for the family. And so they're very much raw and open-ended and unresolved. Monica from our lab has a question for you all. Monica wants to thank you for doing this work and for sharing your research with us today. She wondered how this kind of research has expanded your own understanding of justice, and has this work influenced your own research and maybe career interests or ideas of community involvement in any way. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how this expanded your understanding of justice, and if this work has influenced your own career interests? Maybe we'll start with you, Montserrat.
Yeah, so well, the understanding of justice, I feel like I've been so involved with that just because I'm studying like Latin American and Latinx studies. And like that's everything that we've been like studying, like the understanding of justice. With that being said, it also has influenced like my own research. I recently took my senior seminar last year, and I studied like extractivism in Colombia, and then we were comparing it to like I was like gaining all those skills from there, and then also putting that into the lab, and then meanwhile also the skills from the lab I was taking it into my own research, right? So it's also opened up like my career interests. Like I've been applying to a bunch of organizations for human rights. So hopefully, let's see. And since I'm going to be graduating soon, let's see what's going to happen. But yeah, this has really like expanded like a whole new like dimension like that I didn't even know. I didn't even know human rights, like being an investigator, existed, right? And so it definitely like opened up a whole new world for me.
Thank you, Montse. Denise, how about for you in terms of how it's expanded your understanding of justice and maybe how it's shaped your own possible research and career interests?
Yeah, I think it definitely has changed my perspective on how you can achieve justice, because when we think about justice, I tend to think of law and going to court and going to prison. That's kind of what I think about, but I've never thought about gathering evidence or helping cases through open source investigation. So fact finding, geolocation, making sure everything is the way it is, and making sure no one is lying, or just verifying everything that you can possibly find online. So it definitely has opened my eyes to a whole new world, like Monse was saying. It definitely has also influenced my own research and career interests, because before this, I did know I wanted to go into law, but now joining the lab, it opened my eyes to like law is not the only option anymore, and I can become a human rights investigator by going online like all day. So it definitely has opened my eyes to much more that is out there, and much more ways to be an advocate for human rights abuses.
Thank you so much, Denise. How about Sophie, maybe for you, what has this meant for you in terms of your understanding of justice and any career or research interests that have now emerged for you?
Yeah, so I'm someone who thinks about carceral feminism and anti-carceral feminism a lot. And it's brought up a lot of complicated questions about what justice really looks like in terms of MMIWG. And it's not something that I think is ready to be answered, but it's something that I think needs to be thought about, and what justice really looks like for Native women who are victimized, and yeah, how to bring justice to the situation in a way that doesn't rely on a carceral society.
Thank you, Sophie. How about you, James?
Yeah, kind of on a really similar note, one of my personal beliefs and like just ways of being, right, is I really value like I'm an abolitionist. I think that the judicial system of the US really can be very punishing to people of color, and especially Black and Indigenous people of color. And so, like seeing that and seeing all the violence around us at the hands of the law, it was really discouraging, and it really made me like, it really dampened my view on humanity, and actually bringing justice to people who faced harmful and traumatic experiences. So joining this lab really opened my eyes to the same thing. It doesn't always have to be through the judicial system. There are definitely other ways to help communities and to actually bring justice to families. And I think that really, it means a lot to me. My life really revolves around helping other people, and I really value helping other people. So it's really, I don't know how to say it. It's a joyful thing to have been able to be part of this lab, and to find out that processes like this exist, because it means that there are other ways. And these ways I feel like are more, they really prioritize the community more, and they really prioritize emotional well-being more. So I'm definitely really grateful for that.
Thank you, James. I would definitely say when we engaged in this process, we weren't thinking like, how do we get this information to law enforcement, right? Our impetus had always been, if we find something, how do we share it with AIRC? How do we work with AIRC to maybe share it with other advocates and others who are on the ground working on this? And that, when you have that as your sort of touchstone, right, the sort of desire and the intent of the investigation shifts. Because if we were intending to give this to sort of further the carceral state, we would have probably been given a very different type of presentation. Jemsy, I wondered if you wanted to add anything here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, thinking about how, well, through the seminar and through our research, we've seen how open source research is being used with policymaking, in criminal investigations, as well as just like human rights investigations across the globe, not just in the US. And also like how journalists do this work too. That's been really cool to see and be like, well, like I kind of know what they're doing. That's cool. So this has been really amazing opportunity to think about different journeys that I can take. And also I'm very interested in public health, and I think MMIWG, it is considered a human rights issue, but also a public health issue. So I'm thinking of how I can further down the road incorporate open source research into a public health program, and how I can still give back to my community, and thinking about MMIWG. And yeah, so that's just what I wanted to add really quickly.
I actually just had this conversation about public health and open source earlier today. So Jemsy, you and I will talk. We will talk later. And this will be our final question from Chris Lang. Nice to have you in the virtual room, Chris, with us. Chris writes, thanks for this extremely moving and powerful presentation. I was wondering if you could speak more about the selection process for investigating particular cases. Given a lot of these cases are unresolved, have you felt nervous or maybe unsafe about shining a spotlight on sensitive material that could involve potential perpetrators who might want to remain hidden? So why don't we start with you, Denise, on this question about if you could explain the case selection process, and maybe any nerves that you felt, especially when you all thought, oh, I think we've stumbled across a perpetrator, like when we discovered phallus. If you could talk a little bit about how that experience was for you.
Yeah, so beginning with the selection process, we did have guidance from Dr. H and Jemsy, kind of guiding us through if we wanted to focus on the United States as a whole, if we wanted to focus on different specific states, but we chose to keep it close to home and just to make it more personal. And we decided to choose Northern California specifically to focus on. And in the presentation, we also kind of highlighted why we decided to choose these 3 tribes. But in terms of the second question, I think it was kind of hard seeing faces of people who we believe have made heinous crimes against Native people. So it was really hard seeing their faces. And doing open source research, we did have to find a lot of Facebook posts, Instagram searches, Instagram accounts and Twitter accounts, and just constantly having to see that and verify that and know that this person may have caused harm but is not being punished was really hard. And we definitely talked about how we wanted to shed light on certain tough topics that we talked about, and being more private, like privacy reasons, we did want to exclude many of their names just for safety, but it was really hard trying to cover some of the harder things we witnessed and other things we saw. So it was pretty hard on that. I was nervous and I was kind of scared at times, because I know in the Emerald Triangle, there's a lot of marijuana industries, and it was just scary, not trying to be targeted and stuff. So, but that was kind of our selection process and the way I felt during this research.
And James, you had something you would like to add?
Yeah, in addition to this, I did want to say it is really scary, being potentially, I guess, in danger of doing this kind of work. But for that reason, the lab as a whole really prioritizes protecting your identity online. And that's one of the things we've really learned throughout the investigation and throughout the years is how easy it is to leave a digital footprint. And as a casual user, like we all have a digital footprint, that includes like cookies and it's so much and it's really easy just to leave it like that. So we really took a lot of measures to ensure that it was really difficult to track us down as individuals. Um, yeah, that's I don't know if I'm allowed to expand on that, Profe, but
That's
yeah,
good.
it was okay for sure.
We keep our stealth modes stealthy for a particular reason, because obviously the student security is my top priority as their professor. But this is a really important question that Chris has posed, and I think in terms of not only the potential perpetrator and just the sort of unease with discovering some of the names, like we're looking at tracking some of this stuff down, but also our own safety as we engage in this work, because as we have learned, we have to have and careful of the digital footprint that in fact we leave. So I want to thank everybody so much. I want to thank the team for putting the presentation together. I want to thank all of our attendees for coming. And it's my pleasure to turn it back to Gemsy.
Actually, AIRC intern Sarah will be closing out the event for us today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an intern at the American Indian Resource Center. Thank you for attending the second day of our MMIWG event series. Join us tomorrow, Wednesday, May 5th, from 4 to 5:30 p.m. for a conversation with artist Jamie Black, creator of the Red Dress Project. The Red Dress Project focuses on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women across Canada. It has been installed in public spaces throughout Canada and the United States as a visual reminder of the staggering number of Indigenous women and girls who are no longer with us. May 5th is also the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. We encourage you to wear red tomorrow. We'd like to acknowledge our campus partners. The AIRC has collaborated with the Mary Porter Cessnon Gallery to host our virtual red dress exhibit entitled In Honor of Our Sisters, inspired by the work of Jamie Black. You can check it out at art.ucsc.edu/Cessnon/MMIWG or scan the QR code on the screen with your phone's camera. We ask that you complete our event evaluation form. The link will be posted in the chat for everyone, and it will also be emailed to you all later today. We want to ensure our programming is serving its purpose and our community. Additionally, if you submit an evaluation form, you'll be entered to receive some MMIWG items, and recipients will be contacted via email. We would like to thank our campus partners, the UCSC Campus Advocacy Resources and Education Office, CARE, the Division of Student Affairs and Success, KZSC 88.1 FM, the Human Rights Investigations Lab for the Americas, and the Mary Porter Cessnon Gallery. If you would like to stay connected with the AIRC, please follow us on our social media accounts and subscribe to our newsletter. We are on Facebook at AIRC.UCSC, Instagram at AIRCUCSC, and you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter by going to our official website at AIRC.UCSC.edu. We also encourage you to connect with the Human Rights Investigations Lab. You can connect with them on Facebook and Twitter at RCA UCSC, on Instagram at UCSC.RCA, or you can visit their official website at humanrights.ucsc.edu. Lastly, we are sharing the missing flyer for Khadijah. Please share on your social media as Khadijah's family hopes to bring her home. Thank you for your support in the family's efforts. And thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
since I seen my daughter. My heart is shattered and I know I've gone insane. I walk by a room every day by a prayer. I still light windows hoping she'll find her way. When I've searched the world, I will find you soon. Just know that I will never give up on you. Somebody took away Khadijah. Somebody tore my heart apart. Somebody's taken all our children. I just want my baby back home. Photos and memories rain in an ocean of tears. I can't stop this screaming, my life is unclear. I still hear her voice and her laughter is so clear. I pray she is safe, I pray she is near. When I'll search the world, I will find you soon. Just know that I will never give up on you. Somebody took away Khadijah. Somebody tore my heart apart. Somebody's taken all our children. I just want my baby back home. Let's pray for all the missing children. Let's pray they all make it back home. Somebody took away Khadijah. Somebody tore my heart apart. Somebody's taken all our children. I just want my baby back home. Somebody took away. Somebody tore my heart apart. Somebody's taken all our children. I just want my baby. I miss my baby. I just want my baby back home.